Chapter 2. The chilling winter mornings were just about gone as Sandra stood on the corner of 48th Street and Hoover. But she still had one problem: her daily search for food. She was constantly hungry because seldom did she get enough to really fill her up. As she stopped in front of Sammy's liquor store, the hunger pains almost caused her to double up. Suddenly there was a knock on the window, and the sharp noise brought her out of her daydream of food. A table full of all kinds of food was what she always dreamed about. She glanced up and saw Sammy, the owner of the store, smiling kindly at her from inside. He motioned for the young girl to enter, and Sandra noticed as she came through that the store was empty. She grinned up at Sammy, and he smiled in return. "You want to sweep up today?" he asked in that funny way of his. Without replying, she ran into the back of the store and got the broom out. She knew where everything was kept. When she came back to the front of the store, Sammy was busy waiting on a customer. She began sweeping, and it didn't take long before she was finished with the light work he had asked her to do. When she came back from putting the broom up, Sammy asked, "How come you no go to school today?" His smile was broad on his wrinkled face, and his snow-white hair was still thick and bushy. Sandra just shrugged her shoulders. She didn't want to tell the kind old man that she had been too hungry when she got up to think of school. After looking in the refrigerator and finding it empty, as always, she had known that she couldn't sit in the classroom all day, not without lunch money. She didn't have to answer Sammy, though. He could tell from what she selected as pay for sweeping up what her problem was. He had known that the child was hungry as she stood outside the store. He had seen the look on too many faces when he was in a concentration camp in Germany. The look of hunger was the same, no matter where you were at. He felt sorry for the child, but there was nothing he could really do but help her out like he did whenever she came by. She was really too young for him to hire, so he gave her food whenever she came by. It wasn't necessary for her to sweep up for him, but she seemed to want to feel that she was earning her way. He watched her pick up a pack of cheap lunch meat, then some crackers. "Here," Sammy said as he walked over and got her a pop out of the box. Next he picked up a cake and gave that to her too. Sandra's eyes were shining as she left the store, clutching the food tightly to her thin chest. She almost ran all the way home. Sammy watched her leave with pity in his kind eyes. It was a shame, he knew. He knew the child's mother, a drunk who didn't care about anything but where her next drink was coming from. She had been in his store early that morning, buying her daily bottle of whiskey. He gritted his teeth and went back behind the counter. When Sandra arrived home, she hesitated briefly. She didn't want to run into her mother now. She listened outside the door for a minute, making sure there were no sounds from inside, then turned the knob and went in. The house was deserted, just as she'd hoped it would be. She carried her tightly clutched bundle into the kitchen and sat down. There was no bread, so she made small sandwiches with the crackers. She opened her pop. It was a treat, what with the cake and all. Sometimes when Sammy was busy with customers, she'd go in and steal a can of sardines or something else small. Then her conscience would bother her. Because Sammy was so good to her, she really hated to take anything from him without his knowing it. The sound of a key being put in the door caused her to jam the rest of the tiny sandwiches into her mouth. By the time her mother staggered into the kitchen, she had eaten up everything but the cake. Her mother, a thin, brown-complexioned woman, swayed on her feet, then rocked back in her high-heeled shoes. Her eyes were bloodshot, while the dress she wore was dirty. One of her stockings was rolled down halfway on her leg, while the other one was put on right. At one time, her mother could have been called slightly attractive. She had a small nose, and her hair was a dark brown. But from the constant use of alcohol, her looks were deteriorating. And now a silence filled the small room, a waiting silence that stifled the air, heightened the glare of the ceiling light, moved the walls inward, sealing them in. "Well now, Miss Lady, why ain't you in school?" her mother asked with sarcasm. For a minute, Sandra started to lie, then decided on the truth. "I was hungry. When I got up, there wasn't nothing to eat, so since I didn't have lunch money, I didn't go." Just for a minute, her mother was quiet, taken aback by the answer. Then she put her hands on her hips. "You kids nowadays are full of shit," she yelled loudly. "When I was your age, we went hungry at times, but we took our asses to school. You didn't have lunch money. What the fuck do you think I am, a money tree? Hell, you ain't no little spoiled white kid. Lunch money my ass." She reached down and snatched up the cake. "You had enough money to buy this shit with. I know you, you little bitch. You've been going through my pocketbook taking my change. That's what you've been doing." She started to eat the cake as she rocked back on her heels. "I ain't took nothing from you!" Sandra screamed as she jumped up and made a grab for the cake. "Give me back my cake!" She yelled loudly as her mother continued to cram the cake down her throat. "I'll give you hell and call it cake," her mother retorted as she pushed the screaming child away. As her mother made a motion towards the bottle of pop, Sandra leaped in front of her and snatched the pop out of her reach. She ran around the table attempting to drain the bottle dry. "You better not drink all that pop, you little bitch!" her mother ordered sharply. Sandra continued to drain the bottle until it was empty, ignoring the order. She managed to keep the table between them as her mother continued trying to reach her. A loud knock on the door interrupted the fight before it could get worse. A loud man's voice could be heard. "Sandy, open the goddamn door," a man ordered. Though both women had the same name, most people called Sandra's mother Sandy instead of Sandra. As she staggered towards the door, she made Sandra a promise. "I ain't forgetting, little whore," she swore over her shoulder. Sandra wasn't worried about the threat. She knew her mother would either forget or be in a completely different mood by the time they met again. She watched as her mother opened the door and led the man in. He was carrying a bottle of whiskey. Sandy didn't even stop in the living room. They continued straight on to the bedroom. Then her mother came back out and got 2 glasses, ignoring her daughter completely, as if she was just another piece of the kitchen furniture. Sandra sat in the kitchen, not really knowing what to do. Now that she was full, she silently wished that she was in school. But then she remembered the way the kids talked about her clothes and decided that she didn't want to be in school. If she never went back to school, she'd be happy. The school children had started to call her Raggedy Ann, a nickname she would have rather done without. The sounds of the bed springs brought her back to reality. She knew then that she'd have to leave the house. She couldn't stand to hear the sounds her mother made when she was drunk and in her bedroom. Sandra quickly got up and left the tiny apartment, slamming the door behind her. She walked from Broadway down to 51st Street, all the way to Western, and then back. She stopped in a small store that was crowded and stole a small cherry pie. She went back out and down the street eating the pie. Later in the day, she went into a supermarket and stole 2 packs of cold lunch meat. She took this so that she'd have something to eat when she got up in the morning. She ate 1 package of the meat and saved the other one. What she wanted most, though, were some clothes. But she didn't know how to steal them. She knew that that would be the only way she'd ever get some. If she had some nice skirts, she'd be able to go to school without the kids getting down on her. The more she thought about it, the more she wanted the clothes. She remembered that there was a shopping center up on Slauson Avenue, so she slowly started walking in that direction. It didn't disturb her that it was over 20 blocks away. The thought of catching a bus was out of the question. It was something only the rich did, so she believed. At 10 years of age, she couldn't remember ever being on a bus. Her mother never had any reason to take her anywhere. She noticed older girls putting their thumbs out and getting rides, but that possibility didn't cross her mind. She believed she was too young and nobody would pick her up. Even though she was tall for her age, her chest was as flat as a boy's, and with the clothes she wore, she didn't appear too attractive. She would have had trouble trying to get a ride. She looked too much like a boy. An hour later, she reached the department store parking lot. She went in the back door of the large store. When she reached the children's department, it was crowded. She picked up an empty bag and walked around until she found the skirts and blouses. She didn't know what size she wore, so she held the skirts up in front of her. When she found what she thought would fit, she selected 4 of them and put them in her shopping bag. 2 black women shopping noticed the child stealing and laughed. But it frightened Sandra so that she only managed to stuff 2 blouses into the bag. She almost dropped the bag and ran, but she wanted the clothes too bad. The saleswomen in the department had noticed the child. Sandra walked back out the way she had come in, swinging her bag happily. Now she could go to school without any trouble. If she had enough money for lunch every day, she wouldn't have any problem, she reasoned, as she made her way out of the store.